Hey everybody!
Hey.
Welcome back to the Bailey Body Live Show. Lauren and Fraser Bailey here, co-founders of the Bailey Body and creators of the Fat Apocalypse Transformation Program. So today is one of my favorite topics, and it's really fun because I think it's something that, and I feel really small again, hang on. It's something that everyone needs to know and that everyone can use and implement like right away. Like tomorrow when you go to the store, you're going to be able to use the information that you have here tonight. So what are we talking about? We're talking about food labels and the nutrition facts that you see on your food labels, the ingredients list that you see on your food labels. We're going to talk about how to read that, what it means, how to make sense of it, what to look for in the foods that you choose, and something else I was going to say, I don't remember. The ingredients list, we're going to cover that as well because your label has nutrition facts and an ingredients list, and they're both really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most fundamental thing for anyone to learn at some point is just how to read a label. And I know it sounds boring on the surface, but what you'll find is that it not only helps you eat better and get to your fat loss goals, but it allows you to travel, go on vacation, be away from your nutritionist or your trainer or your program, and make decisions on the fly. So you might be hungry and you might go into the store. You have no one to help you out, no one to talk to. You may be out of town, and you have to make a decision then and there as to what is going to help me, what is not going to help me. This allows freedom. So in a sense, when you're thinking of nutritional labels, don't think, oh God, I've got to learn math and science and think that I'm going to allow myself this tool to create freedom. So I can go away for New Year's, I can be away with family for Christmas, out of town, at other stores that I'm not familiar with. I can look at something and I know this is going to help me with my goal.
Yeah, that's what's really cool is that we don't promote like calorie counting or anything like that, but just knowing how to do things like this will give you more flexibility with your planning.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. I have some printouts so that we can kind of look at some labels. First of all, most of your diet should consist of foods that don't have labels on them. So things out of the produce department, things like that, they don't have labels on an apple. But there are things that you're going to eat that are going to have a nutrition label on it. And it'll look like this. So this one has the nutrition facts. This is just kind of a blow up of that. It does not show the ingredients list on it. But I want to go through this with you first and show you how to go through this list and what to look for. So I would say the very first thing that you need to look at and is really commonly overlooked is the serving size. So that's going to be found right up here at the top under where it says nutrition facts.
So you essentially work from the top and work your way down.
Yeah. So most people go straight for the calories, but they forget to look at the serving size. And if you have, this is common, for example, with like bottled drinks, even like some of the bottled teas and stuff that are promoted really healthy, and you look at it and you're like, oh, it only has 100 calories. Well, but there could be 2 or 3 servings in that bottle, whereas you're really just going to drink the whole bottle at once, but they've broken the serving sizes down in order to make the nutrition facts look more appealing.
It's the same with, the bags of microwavable rice. You might look at that bag and you might be like, that's 1 serving. It's one bag, it must be 1 serving. A lot of them are actually 2 servings. So you've got to be very aware that, hey, I might be using this thing, drinking or consuming this whole thing, like Lauren was saying, this whole bottle of juice, but there may be multiple servings in there that you're missing. So you're getting a heck load of extra calories above what you think you are.
Yeah, so unless the serving size is 1, like the serving, because it says serving size first of all, and then it says servings per container.
Yes.
And that's what you need to pay attention to. So for example, in this one, I don't even know what this product is. I just printed a large viewable label, but the serving size is 1 cookie. The servings per container, there's 12 cookies. So this would be a box of cookies that has 12 cookies in it, but the serving size is only 1 cookie. Most people do not just eat one cookie. Maybe you'll eat 3 cookies, 3 or 4 cookies. You've got to do the math, and you've got to multiply all of these numbers times 3 or 4, or however many cookies you end up eating. So in this example, you have 1 cookie is your serving size. That's 160 calories. So this is the next thing you'll look at right below your servings is the calories, and then you've got calories from fat. Now, a lot of people in the typical dieting scene really go crazy and they, fall in love with this calories from fat thing. I really don't think that is very important, and I'm going to show you the more important things as we go through, because if it's healthy fats and things like that, if this was a can of coconut milk, all of the calories are going to be from fat basically, but that's okay in that instance because it's a really healthy food and it's a really healthy fat. But if someone from like Weight Watchers or something were to look at that would have a panic attack.
So I think, like to summarize what Lauren was saying, it's important to realize that you have to look at the nutritional label and you actually have to look at the product you're buying synergistically. You can't just look at the nutritional label and not think about the product you're buying. And you can't just look at the product you're buying and not think about the label. You have to put the two together to make sense of it. So like she was saying with the coconut milk, or it could be like a bag of almonds or cashew nuts. That fat reading might be quite high, and you might look at that and go, oh, there's a lot of calories in here, but hey, it's a healthy whole food. So you got to get back to remember that there is a context with the label that you have to kind of marry up and take into consideration.
Yeah, it goes back to, everything that we always talk about is hormones. Everything is related to hormones, especially when it comes to your fat loss and even your health in general. Your hormones dictate a lot, and your hormones are going to be dictated by the actual substance of the food and not these numbers, not the calories, not the macro breakdown necessarily. All right, so we've got your calories. Pay attention to that though. So you want to know for 1 serving or however much you're going to be eating, how many calories, that's just total overall calories, are in that food. That's going to be your energy. Then you've got it broken down into total fat, grams, and these percentages, to be honest with you, I don't pay attention to these percentages at all. It's like they don't even exist on there. That's your percent daily value according to what the government believes you should have of certain foods. And as we know from the food guide pyramid and all of that is junk. And that is exactly the reason why we have an obesity epidemic and a diabetes epidemic and cancer and all these other health problems, is because we've been following the regulations and the suggestions of the government on what we should eat.
So I think it's important that when you're looking at this, just focus on the things that we're telling you to focus on, eliminate the rest, because you can look at that and it can look very complex. There's numbers everywhere, there's tables everywhere. It's like, oh my God. So forget the stuff that we don't talk about or we say that isn't important. Just disregard that. Grab something from your kitchen right now with a nutritional label so you can go through this with us and kind of compare what you're looking at with this, and you can start making sense of the foods that you're eating. So do that quickly as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because you just want to learn these numbers that we're going to teach you. You can make these decisions on your own. You're going to learn what's important for you to have in your diet and what's not. All right, so we've got total fat in grams. Then they break that down into saturated fat and trans fat. I think on some products they even will put, like, if it's mono or unsaturated, some of the other different kinds of fats. This one just lists saturated and trans fats. Typically, saturated fats are less healthy for you, but not always the case. Like, for example, coconut milk, again, that would be considered a saturated fat, but it's a really healthy fat. It's a medium chain triglyceride. Trans fats are always going to be bad, so you just want to stay away from them.
Usually you can tell if the saturated fat is a bad fat if the trans fat level is high as well. So here you can see the saturated fat is 1.5 grams per serving, and the trans fat is also 1.5 grams. If that was like coconut milk, you wouldn't have that trans fat number in there. So it would just be saturated fat and not the trans fat in there as well. Because you have both, you can almost assume that it's not a very healthy food because of the combination. So you can assume that because the trans fat is present, that saturated fat is probably not a healthy type of saturated fat.
Yeah, and while we're here, this is something, some of these terms we're going to get into the labeling tricks later on. But while we're on the trans fat, I want to tell you this before I forget, because this is my favorite food labeling trick. The trans fats. Foods have to label their trans fats now because trans fats across the board, even the government, everyone has said trans fats are really, really bad for you and, you know, possibly linked to cancer and all of these other things. So everyone agrees trans fats are bad, so they have to be labeled on here. However, if a package, for example, the front of your package is where they put all the marketing words and all of that stuff, it can say trans fat free or 0 trans fats. But the trickiness behind the labeling is that if it has less than, and I'll go through the numbers when I hit this, I think it's less than, say, 5 grams, or for trans fats, I think it's like half a gram. So if there's less than half a gram per serving, again, you have to remember the serving size and how many servings in the container. So if they break that serving size down real small so that they can get your trans fats to less than that amount, then they can label it on the front as being trans fat free. But that's what I'm going to show you later on. If you look in the ingredients list, if it has anything that says hydrogenated, it does in fact have trans fats. So that's something sneaky that they do. So be on the lookout for that and know that now. All right, then we've got cholesterol in milligrams listed, sodium in milligrams. So let's go through those before we go to the carbs.
The two things to remember with those two is that, one, sodium shouldn't be an issue if your diet consists of mainly whole foods. So, you know, for someone who eats a lot of, you know, lean protein, vegetables, foods from the perimeter of the supermarket that don't really have a nutritional label, your sodium levels will probably be within normal range. Sodium only goes way, way up when we consume a lot of processed food. So the first and foremost thing is to say, you know, how whole food orientated is your diet? If it's quite whole food orientated, the sodium really isn't an issue, because in all honesty, you need sodium in your body to actually function. There's a role for sodium. It's just when we get too much of it. So if you're someone who has a bit of a junk food diet, or, you know, doesn't eat a lot of whole foods, the sodium is something to take into account. It can definitely increase blood pressure, create water retention, and things like that. So you do need to look at that. And say, for example, like something like a chicken broth or a vegetable broth or things like that, you might find that the organic one has twice as much sodium as the non-organic one. So it's down to you whether to say, okay, is the rest of my diet good enough that I can buy the organic one and go for more sodium, or is my diet not that good yet where I want the lowest sodium but something that's not completely organic yet? So you've got to weigh that into account. And the last thing that's really important to remember, and I know that this is something that's going to be very foreign to a lot of people, is that cholesterol in food isn't actually connected to elevated cholesterol levels in your bloodstream. And I know that sounds very weird, and your doctors will tell you otherwise, like, you know, don't eat egg yolks, don't consume this and that, it's got high cholesterol. That is outdated science. That's old science that was proven wrong a long time ago, but it's never caught on with mainstream, you know, nutrition. What causes high cholesterol is a completely another topic that we would cover at some point. It's essentially inflammation from inflammatory foods that we'll cover in another topic completely. But just know that I don't even look at the cholesterol on this, because I understand that the cholesterol in the food doesn't correlate to cholesterol in your bloodstream. I would be much more concerned about the trans fat and things like that in this.
Yeah, I agree. And like Fraser was talking about the sodium, if you are new to this and to the lifestyle that we preach, and if you eat a lot of packaged foods, then you do need to pay attention to that sodium, because chances are you're getting way too much sodium. And if you are hypertensive, you have high blood pressure, then you may need to watch your sodium levels as well. But then there are also a lot of other lifestyle factors that probably could be improved, and you do need sodium in your diet in certain levels and from certain sources, you know, things like the pink Himalayan rock salt. So those are better for you than the sodium that you'll get in like packaged cookies, for example, or things like that. So moving on, we've got total carbohydrates, and this is going to be a really controversial one. This is another thing that common dieters will look at. You got total carbs, then it's broken down into dietary fiber and sugars. So this one is actually a section that I really pay attention to. If there's anything that you want to limit in your diet, especially if you're trying to lose weight, it would be your carbs and definitely the sugars. So the sugars, for example, this is one cookie, remember, serving size. This has 13 grams of sugar.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at that right off the cuff, you can see that most of the numbers on here are like 1.5 grams, 1 gram of protein, but 13 grams of sugar. So 95% of this is sugar, essentially. So there's a large ratio of something that is not going to help you with your fat loss for the average person. In the right context, yes, but the average person, no.
And, look at it in 24 grams of total carbs.
Yeah.
So 24 grams of carbs compared to the 1 gram of protein, which we haven't gotten to yet. That's the last thing that's listed is protein. So 24 grams of carbs to 1 gram of protein is not a very good ratio. If you want to have any kind of balance in your diet, and look at these numbers on here and make sure that they're kind of balanced. I mean, if this was a healthier food, maybe it might have 5 or 6 grams of carbs, maybe slightly higher protein, 10 grams of protein, 3 to 5 grams of fat, something like that, where all of the numbers are kind of balanced.
Yeah.
And of course, it's going to depend on the type of food. Things like tuna fish are going to be all protein and fat basically and no carbs.
Yeah.
Whereas this is cookies and it's completely unhealthy for you. It's all carbs, all sugar.
And you've got to be very aware that when you see something and it's marketed as fat-free, look at the sugar or the carbohydrate intake on that product. What you'll find often is that a way to sell these things, they have to market it as something free. They have to try and give the consumer some kind of, perceived benefit in buying this thing. So what you'll see is that something might be fat-free, but it may have 100 grams of sugar in it. And that's the illusion, that everyone has been indoctrinated into thinking that fat is the only problem. And it's not just that. It's the balance of everything. When the balance is out, stuff goes wrong. And it's not saying that sugar's bad. It's not saying that fat's bad. Neither are bad, but in the wrong context, which is 99% of the population, and most of the people we're probably talking to tonight, to some degree of that context fits you, that is a bad thing. So you have to be aware that fat-free often has a lot of hidden carbohydrates as well.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of that would be something like mayonnaise. They tend to make it fat-free because people want that. It's a high-fat product, and people look for low fat. So if they make fat-free mayonnaise, what do? They might take out, maybe before it was made with a virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil or something, which is high in fat, but it's not necessarily bad fats. Especially if it's not heated, then it's a good fat for you. But in order to make it look fat-free, they're going to take that out and they're going to put high fructose corn syrup in it instead, which is just pure sugar junk food. And so now they have 0 fat, but they've just increased all the sugar.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other part on this side is just talking about the percent daily values that we on the side here that we said. Just disregard that. It's not really important.
And at the bottom, turn it around. And at the bottom, you have a whole lot of percentages here. Don't even worry about that stuff. That is just daily recommended consumptions by the government, suggesting what you should intake. But the reality is that they really have no clue what they're talking about. So forget about that stuff there. The main thing you need to look at is the corn numbers in the middle there. That's really important.
Yeah. So then below or on the side or somewhere else on the back of that package, you're going to have an ingredients list. First thing, easiest way to look at it is your ingredients list should be as short as possible. So again, I don't know what
and it's usually ranked
this product
it's usually ranked in an order. So the thing that is the most dominant ingredients usually comes first, I believe.
Always, yeah.
And it filters down to the least dominant ingredients. So you'll essentially get a very good idea if what you're about to eat is good or bad based on the first line of ingredients.
Yeah. So for example, in this one, the first ingredient says potatoes. That means that is the highest amount that's in this product.
Yeah.
So whatever is last that's going to be in the least amount in that product. Potatoes is the majority ingredient. So it always goes from most in amount to least in amount.
And see, what you would see here is that if you look at the carbohydrate intake, it will say, is that on the screen?
It says 25 grams of
so,
carbs.
but when we were looking at the other one, what it was saying, I think it was 25 grams of total carbohydrate, but it was 13 grams of sugar. There's a disparity there. 24 total grams, but 13 grams of sugar. There's like 11 grams missing. So if you notice there's missing grams, what it often is if you look at that and it says potatoes, that's because it's a starch. So there's 11 grams of starchy carbohydrates in there, but they don't legally have to put that in there. They just put in sugar. So understand that the other remaining carbohydrates that aren't listed are potato, which is a starchy carbohydrate.
Yeah. So you want to, for the ingredients list, look and see what those dominant ingredients are. And you want them to be recognizable. Like this is a really long ingredients list. If you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be eating it. So you really want your ingredients list to be as simple as possible. Like you want it to say potatoes, eggs, mayonnaise. I mean, even though it says mayonnaise, and then it'll show you in parentheses. So mayonnaise in and of itself may not be the worst thing, but this breaks this down on here, and it tells you what that mayonnaise is made from.
Maybe
soybean oil,
maybe
water.
give them some some keywords that you would find in there that would tell you that this product isn't very good.
Yeah.
So if you were looking
for example, I mean, this mayonnaise would be perfect because it breaks down. It says potatoes, eggs. This is a potato salad. I remember seeing on the website when I printed it. So mayonnaise. Then in parentheses, it tells you what is in that mayonnaise. So this has soybean oil, which is not good. I would not. That's one keyword that I would pick out. Soybean oil. Water, egg yolks, fine. Vinegar, fine. High fructose corn syrup. That's another huge buzzword.
High fructose corn syrup.
High fructose corn syrup is terrible for you. Salt, mustard, blah, blah, blah. Then you can just look as we go down the list. Like look at some of these words and things. There's like chemical names and stuff that you can't pronounce. Preservatives and more high fructose corn syrup. So you see, that's another little trick that they can do. High fructose corn syrup is in this ingredients list at least twice. I just saw it.
Yeah.
But they list it as other ingredients. So in mayonnaise, then they break it down, and high fructose corn syrup is a component of that mayonnaise. But then down here, it also has, what is it that? Just high fructose corn syrup by itself. It's not as a part of something else. Then they have mustard. And then in parentheses, it tells you what that mustard is made out of, and again lists high fructose corn syrup. So there's 3 times that I've seen it already in this list. So if they were to put it all as one, it may be higher up on this list.
It would be number 1 on the list, and you look at it and you'd know straight away that it was.
Exactly. But that's another trick of the label. They can break it down as far as grouping it into other parts, other products.
And I mean, and if you wanted to, be a detective and really find these things out, you could literally Google search these names in here and find out what each thing is. And some things have a scientific name, but they're harmless. Like if you found a nutritional label for like an apple, not that they really have them, but I have seen one floating around on the internet. It has all these scientific names because it has chemical components in it, which is still healthy. But what you can do is, if you're gluten sensitive or there's other foods that you're allergic to, there might be compounds in this that are broken down into scientific terms that actually mask what it actually is. And part of that is just, the scientific documentation they have to do with the nutritional label. But I think part of it is also to lull the consumer into a sense that they're so overwhelmed with all this jargon that they just buy it anyway. So if you feel like you're inflammatory to something, or you have digestive issues, or you have a gluten intolerance, or whatever it may be, you need to be aware of the nutritional label, very aware, because there could be something in there that is definitely playing a role in some of the stuff that you might be experiencing.
Yeah, I just counted high fructose corn syrup at least 4 times in this ingredients list, so that's crazy. So definitely the things that I would, red flag in any ingredients list would be high fructose corn syrup, modified cornstarch, Don't need that stuff.
Soybean oil.
Soybean oil. Safflower oils.
Those are the main
sugar.
ones, yeah.
Sugar, you know, high fructose corn syrup is basically another word for sugar, but it's even worse than just regular sugar.
Dextrose.
Anything that says hydrogenated. Hydrogenated anything means that it's been the chemical structure, the chemical molecule of the food, like at a molecular level, has been disoriented. It has been changed to get certain properties out of it. Anything that's hydrogenated, you don't want it. And remember, that means there's trans fats in there.
Yeah.
All right, so that is pretty good on the ingredients list. So we've only got about 5 minutes left. I want to go through quickly and tell you some of like the tricky labeling words that they will put on here. So for example, you'll see things like fat-free. Fat-free means that it has less than half a gram of fat in a serving, not necessarily in however much you're going to eat, but in a serving that they list as their serving size. If it has less than half a gram, they can label it as fat-free.
Yeah.
Calorie-free, as long as it has less than 5 calories per serving. Same thing.
So again, if it's calorie-free, but you're consuming large volumes, say it was 4 calories total. You know, anything less than 5 calories. So say it was 4 calories total. If you're consuming large volumes of that thing, you could be getting a lot of extra calories into your diet that aren't above and beyond what you can handle.
And it doesn't, the important thing is that it doesn't just mean that it's calorie free like it says it is. You know, for people will look at a certain label and be like, it's calorie free. How's that possible? Like, what is it? If it's, you know, it's nothing, it's air. Yeah. Well, no, it's just that it has minimal calories, and so they can label it as calorie free. Things that are listed as less. So if it says, you know, it contains less or less fat, you know, less fat product, that just means it contains 25% less than the original version. So if the original version was super high in fat or, you know, sugar or whatever it is, it can say, you know, less fat. And it only has to mean it's 25% less than the other one. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's in a healthy range for you. Same thing for when it says reduced. It just means that it contains at least 25% fewer of the calories, sodium, whatever that they're measuring. Light means that it contains 1/3 fewer calories, or no more than half the fat of a higher calorie or higher fat version. Cholesterol free, again, just means that there's less than 2 milligrams of cholesterol and 2 grams or less of saturated fat per serving. Let's see what else. Low calorie means that it's fewer than 40 calories per serving. The trans fats I already talked about with you guys. Always read the ingredients list for that. Even if it's listed as 0 trans fats, if the words hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated or anywhere in that ingredients list, it does have trans fats.
I think it's important to remember that, you know, all the things that Lauren just said, she went through that really quickly, and I know you won't remember a lot of those, but like fat-free, calorie-free, low cholesterol, all those things. If they are using that as a marketing tool, there's something that they're hiding in there. So be very aware of that. You know, they're not just promoting that because they want you to be healthy. They're promoting that so you buy their stuff.
Right.
You know, so there's something they're hiding in there, and it's usually something opposing what they're talking about. So if it's fat-free, the carbohydrates. If it's sugar-free, it's the fat and it's other stuff. If it's cholesterol, it's going to be, you know what I mean? So there's always something opposing what they're saying is the free aspect of it to basically compensate for that thing being missing.
Right. They're just marketing is all that they're doing. So, or advertising. But an apple, for example, an apple is gluten-free, an apple is low-calorie, an apple is low-fat, an apple is, you know, but it doesn't have labels shouting all of these things at you because it's just a whole food. It's a healthy food, and they don't have to convince you that you should eat it. Some other ones that are important, I think, to mention are things associated with the grains. So as if you follow us at all, you know that we're not huge grain lovers. Some grains can be good. A lot of people have sensitivities to grain or gluten specifically. So and we just don't believe that starchy carbohydrates and things like that should make up a huge part of your diet. But if you are having like breads or even cereals will have these grain labels on them, They can say made with whole grains. You see that all the time. All it needs is a tiny bit of whole grain, like one whole grain in there, and they can label that it's made with whole grains. It doesn't mean that it's all whole grains. It's just made with it in there somewhere. So that's something, to look out for.
And also think of it like this, what is your knowledge on why a whole grain is healthier than another grain? Essentially, whole grains still have the shell and the husk on them. It actually strains your digestive system more to have to break away the husk, the shell, get to the nutrients. So if your digestive system is impaired, marketing something as whole grain is just as pointless as having grains, period. Like they're trying to sell you into something that they've indoctrinated into people over years and years to be something that's healthy, when, one of the things that we see most people doing wrong who are overweight or have high body fat levels is they're just eating way too many grains. Far too many grains. That's probably a huge thing.
And again, that depends on who you are, what your situation is, that you would be eating them or not. Because like Fraser mentioned, the whole grains have digestive issues in themselves because they are whole. So it could be better, but then it may not be necessarily good for your digestion to be having that either. But I definitely wouldn't go with white breads and things like that, because those things are bleached and processed. Like that's just always going to be bad for you. Just a couple of other ones to mention. Multi-grain. If it says multi-grain, that just means that there's more than one grain. It's not telling you if it's whole grain or not whole grain or anything about the grain. It's just saying there's multiple kinds of grains in this food. When it comes to if you're looking for wheat, it can say wheat flour, but unless it says 100% whole wheat, then that's what you would want to look for if you were looking for a whole wheat product. If it just says wheat flour in the ingredients list, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all whole wheat or what kind of wheat. Again, it's just tricky words that they use.
But I guess I think the most important thing to remember is that when you go in there, look at that nutritional label. First, look at the serving size. Get an idea of what the serving size looks like first. That's going to be your number one thing. The second thing is to look through that list that we talked about, the saturated fat. If it's a saturated fat, is it a healthy product? Is it a coconut product? Is it an olive oil or something like that? It may say monounsaturated, but if it's not, if it has trans fats with it, it usually is something that you want to avoid. Trans fats usually mean it's going to be something processed. It's essentially going to be some kind of junk food. So if you're unsure about that, the trans fat will be a key indicator on that. Then you want to look at the carbohydrates. Obviously the sugars are going to be important. The amount missing between the sugars and the total carbohydrates can sometimes be starchy carbohydrates, which is still going to convert into sugar in your body. So essentially you're looking at the total amount of carbohydrates there, and you're looking at the protein. And like Lauren was saying earlier, it depends what type of food you're getting. If you are looking for like a protein, so like whether it be beef, chicken, fish, whatever it may be, if it has a nutrition label, the protein's going to be very high. There may be some fat, and the carbohydrates will be very low. That's in context with the protein. If you're looking for fruit, there will be carbohydrates. There may be a little bit of protein, and there'll probably be no fat, mainly just carbohydrates. So it's important to take that into context. So you want to look at those few things, and then like Lauren was finally saying, look at the ingredients label and don't get overwhelmed if it's really long. Obviously, if it's really long, it's going to tell you something. It's going to tell you something that maybe you shouldn't be looking at this in the first place. But if you want to learn more, look at the first few lines. Like she was saying, what were you saying? Soybean oil, high fructose corn syrup, safflower oil, hydrogenated.
I wanted to point, like enriched and bleached.
Enriched.
Bleached, you definitely don't want. Enriched means it's been stripped of something, and now they're trying to put it back in there, like manufactured the vitamins and minerals that they've already stripped out of it, they're trying to add in. So.
And on the front of the packet, if it says cholesterol, low cholesterol or cholesterol free, low fat, low sugar, whatever it may be, low calorie, it's always going to be hiding something else. So our best piece of advice that we can give you, I'll give you one, and then Lauren can maybe give you one. Mine would be 90+% of your diet should just be non-nutritional label stuff, period. If you're eating whole vegetables, lean proteins, things like that, you'll find that those don't need labels. Yeah, you can find the nutritional breakdowns online on something like calorieking.com, and that way you can get an idea of how much is each thing. But if you avoid your labels for the most part, you will struggle to overeat your amount of calories per day, and that will set you up to be a lot healthier and lose a lot of body fat in the long run. So what would you say is your final
My
piece?
final tip would be to do what I do and forget about the scale, forget about fat loss, forget about how quickly it's going to happen, and focus on the quality of your food. So when I look at a nutrition label, I typically, the first thing that I look at is the ingredients list. I don't even look at the numbers first, because I don't care how many calories are in it. I don't care how much fat is in it. Any of those things, unless the ingredients, the foods that it's made from, are good. If it's junk food, then I don't care what's in it. And if it's only good foods, like a can of coconut milk that only has coconut cream or coconut milk, whatever, and that's it, then I don't care if it says 1,000 calories from fat. I want it because I know that those are good calories and that's good, healthy fat.
Yeah, and I think in closing, that's the last important thing to remember, is that it's not just about the total calories or the total amount of carbohydrates or anything like that. Part of it is also what, like Lauren was saying, what type of ingredients does it have? Because if it has bad ingredients and it shifts you in a negative hormonal way, your body's going to do drastically different things with those calories than it would for someone who's healthier. So you've got to understand that the types of ingredients in the food will have a hormonal shift, and then it will dictate what your body does with those calories. So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with a new topic.
I had fun.
Yeah, we'll be back next week with a new topic. So tune in again next week. We'll post it up during the week what that will be. And
yeah, if you have any suggestions, anything that you want us to talk about, please email us at info@thebaileybody.com. Also, if you have any questions about anything in particular, you can email us and then we'll address them on our shows. And if you are interested in finding out your hormonal situation, what you could possibly do to improve your health or improve your fat loss, whatever it is that you're looking to achieve, you can use the link above here and you can do our free hormone analysis that we have. It's available online, completely free. You just fill out the question right there online, you hit submit, and Fraser will send you a report based on your answers of suggestions, lifestyle suggestions, things that you can do to improve. And it also, as soon as you hit submit, it will pop up and give you the option to schedule a 20-minute complimentary consultation that he can do on the phone with you to go over that result that he's going to email to you anyway. So make sure that after you hit submit, go ahead and schedule the call with him too, and then you'll get the written version via email from him, and he can walk you through that on the phone as well. So hormones.baileybodylive.com. So that's probably where you're watching us now, baileybodylive.com. So just put hormones in front of it, and there it is. So
we are out.
That's it for today. Hope you guys had a good time. Thanks for hanging out with us again. And we'll see you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Bye.